Good to see you all. I see some names who've been at each one of these sessions. So thank you for joining again. And when I say each one of these sessions, I mean going back to June. So thank you for coming back again. Welcome, welcome. We're going to give it a few more seconds to get folks in, and then we'll get started. We plan to go about 30, 35 minutes a day. We heard your feedback. Folks want us to keep this efficient and effective, to keep it tight, and we plan to do that. Share information and then take as many questions as we can. You can use the ICSD communications in the chat room. You can send your questions to ICSD communications, and we will try to get to them during this session and post many of the answers to our website, frequently asked questions. All right, a few more folks are joining here. All right, I think we will get started. Good afternoon, happy Friday to everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for this latest iteration of the ICSD Reopen sessions. We have had many conversations going back to June. We had a conversation like this in June, then in July, and now again in August. And each time we've said the information will change as we've gotten different guidance each day. New information has revealed itself to us. So we've had to be flexible in our approaches to this, and I expect we will continue to be flexible. Today, we hope to give you an update of where we are right now. Many of you have heard that our Board of Education on Tuesday evening adopted a new academic calendar, which speaks to shifts in the dates we've shared before when it comes to the start of the school year and when we will do in-person learning. The shift in the schedule, let me slow down. I'm Lou Brown. I have the honor and pleasure of being the superintendent of schools here. And I'm joined by my good friend, Lily Talcott, who's the deputy superintendent, and Carrie Burke, who's our coordinator of health and wellness. And this is the third of 3 sessions we've done over the last day to help folks understand where we are currently with our reopening planning. And again, the Board of Education on Tuesday voted to shift our academic calendar. That academic calendar will now allow for us to see all of our staff, which is something we haven't done since March 13th for various reasons. But now we get our folks back. This academic calendar shift allows for us to do professional development for everyone on the days listed on your screen. There will be intensive professional development. We'll talk about what it will entail later in this session. We're excited about that. We are eager to get folks in to talk about distance learning, particularly, and how we will do that exceptionally well. We will be better than we were last spring because we will have time to plan and think through it. And I've already seen some of the schedules, and I think you're going to be happy with what we're proposing. This new academic calendar also speaks to everyone, and this was some confusion last night and on the call. Every young person will start school here on September the 14th, whether you've chosen to be in person or virtual. Everyone starts on the 14th. Now, the beginning of our academic calendar speaks to everyone being in a virtual learning environment first. We've had to push back the in-person learning, and I'll talk about why we've had to push that back here in a second. The in-person learning will begin on October the 5th. So September the 14th, everyone starts. The folks who have chosen, the families who've chosen to be in person, we plan to have them shift on October the 5th. Why do we make that shift in the calendar? Why do we make that change? We've heard from folks, the survey data, the Let's Talk submissions, the thousands of emails, the stops in the grocery store, physically distanced, of course. People have given us a lot of feedback about their thinking and what they wish for us to do. We, rather uniquely, we offered choice to all of our families to choose in person or virtual, and we offered that same choice to teachers. The data have come back, and we have some work to do to make the staffing and the scheduling work in a way that will be safe and effective for all of our young people. We need to spend more time sorting through that. The data as of the 7th of August, this data is changing every day as folks change their minds. And again, we've said to folks, we want you to honor your selection, but if you wish to change your minds, we would honor that too. And we've had some folks change. Going back to the 7th, of the families who chose to be in person, that was around 56%. Those who've chosen to be in a distance learning environment or some other type of environment, it's more like 43, 45%, 44% or so there. So that's the data for family choice. For teachers, we had about 32% choose to be in person and about 68% choosing to be in virtual or some other environmental situation. So those numbers have presented us some challenges, and we need some additional time to work through that. And we'll address that here in a second as well. Other reasons for why we need to push back the in-person learning include the significant, and we heard from folks over and over again, the upcoming and recent transitions in mobility in our community. Folks are moving in, a lot of folks are moving in. And folks wanted us to monitor the data to see if the infection rates would impact the opening of our buildings. So this delay in in-person instruction gives us time to monitor that data. The HVAC system that we will be better than ever before here in our school district when we open up in person. We've had a significant amount of upgrades. We've talked to engineers, we've talked to our architects. We, like every other school district, is waiting on those MERV 13 filters. There's a significant backlog. We were unsure if we would get them in on time and installed on time for the start of the school year in person. Now this delay gives us a bit of a cushion, and now we're much more confident that we can get those installed. The same type of supply chain issues that our folks here locally are experiencing, folks are experiencing all over the country, which has caused some delays in our capital projects, particularly at Ithaca High School, Carolina Elementary with the septic system. We're having a tough time. Our contractors, our construction managers are having a tough time getting supplies in. Therefore, it's causing some delays, and it's impacting whether or not we could open up school for in-person learning on the originally scheduled date. So all of those, any one of them could impact us opening up our school buildings. There is no ranked order there. They're all significant issues that we're working through, in addition to the most important pressing issue is that we're in the midst of a global pandemic, and the global pandemic is causing these issues that we're dealing with here. We're confident that we can work through them, and we are very hopeful that we can open up for in-person learning on October the 5th. So now we wish to share with you what a day in the life would look like, talk about some of our health and safety shifts that we're making, some enhancements, and then again, taking your questions. Please send your questions to ICSD Communications, and we'll get to as many as we can during this session. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Talcott.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. As Dr. Brown mentioned, this shift in our planning, although it pains us that we'll not be able to welcome young people to our physical spaces starting in September, and that's pushed back to October 5th. We're really committed to still providing the best experience we possibly can for all of our young people. So we've got some updates that we want to share within our 4 pillars of reopening, which we continue to use to help us guide how we plan to reopen. So culture, the first one, physical and environmental health and safety, social, emotional, and academic learning, and communication. So what's new in relationship to culture? Well, if you have checked out our website at all recently, you'll see at the top that red banner. It reads #ReopenICSD Gallery. If you click on that, you see this. This is really about us co-creating and essentially crowdsourcing a culture shift for our community. It's around why we wear masks, what school means to us, and how we can stay connected through a global pandemic, and the ways in which we're acting individually and thinking collectively in order to build new cultural norms around health and safety measures. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who may have joined a little later, my name is Carrie Burke. I'm the Coordinator of Health Services and Wellness for the district. So with respect to health and safety, we have a few updates, things to share with you. And physical distancing, as is well established, is one of the key measures for preventing the spread of this virus. We are thinking about physical distancing across the entire school day. So beginning with travel to and from school, we've established practices to support distancing. For example, students on our buses will be seated, one student per seat, with the exception of students who live in the same household. In those cases, we may encourage them to sit together to allow additional riders to be transported. In the event there's greater physical distancing available on the school bus, we will spread students out based on ridership. So you may have something like this image here, where you see students seated in every other seat. As described in our plan and previous sessions, we will continue to stagger arrival and dismissal procedures, again, support physical distancing. Within our buildings, we've talked about our practices in terms of limiting contact and movement between groups, whether that's cohorting at the elementary level or the use of block scheduling at the high school. We've established that we have 1 million square feet across of our district to utilize for physical distancing practices. But since we last met, we want to share with you, we've made some investments to support a smaller footprint in our classrooms. So images you see here are of classroom furniture, of desks for use by students and teachers to create a more seamless and child-centered configuration. Where we are unable to physically distance, we are investing in polycarbonate barriers for school reception and office areas. With respect to PPE, hygiene, and screening, we've been successful in procuring needed resources such as the gowns, masks, both adult and pediatric, gloves, and face shields, the materials you see here. Some of these items have already been received and are inventoried, and more is coming in the next few weeks. In terms of hygiene, you may have seen one of the 30 outdoor sinks that we have procured and distributed across our school sites. And in our buildings, we have both wall-mounted and personal hand sanitizer available. And then lastly, on the far right, there's a screen capture. We have recently contracted with one of our existing vendors to provide a mobile application, a web-based application for screening of students in the home setting. The benefit of using this particular application and vendor is that it will prompt individuals, parents, and caregivers to review the screening criteria on a daily basis and respond. And we in the school setting will know students who, for whatever reason, are not screened in the home setting, and we can successfully identify them and screen them upon arrival to school. With respect to facilities and HVAC, we are considering ventilation across all of our settings, including our school buses. So for example, when temperatures outside are higher than 45 degrees, school buses will transport students with roof hatches and windows open to provide additional airflow. We are working with multiple vendors around our HVAC system. You can see those listed here, and they are supporting assessment, remediation, repair, and procurement of materials like those MERV 13 filters you've heard so much about. Additionally, you see an image here of a device that will be used for disinfecting not only our buses, but our interior spaces following the end of the school day. In terms of social, emotional, and academic learning, there are a number of features around distance learning that are going to be markedly different than they were in the spring. We're in the midst of currently developing those very clearly defined schedules, outlining when that synchronous or real-time live instruction is going to happen via the computer, and when that asynchronous learning could potentially happen. So that's that anytime learning for young people. Additionally, small groups, relationships, peer-to-peer interactions, those are key. We heard feedback loud and clear from our educators, from our students and our families that those small groups and those times when folks could really interact together in more meaningful ways allowed for both greater academic learning and greater social emotional learning. So we're working those into our distance learning plans and again, communicating those out soon. Our students who have individualized education plans and 504 accommodation plans, as we define those schedules, our master educators of inclusion and caseworkers are reaching out to individual families and kiddos in order to work through what we're calling a virtual learning plan. We're looking at the IEP, the 504, and with each individual student, ensuring that we're attending to that IEP within a distance learning model. We're going to continue our food service pickup system at various locations throughout the school district with shelf-stable meals. Our pre-K through first grade learners are all going to have iPads, which will be deployed by September 14th. And our second through 12th grade learners are going to have Chromebooks and chargers at home. Additionally, we're working with families who may need access to the internet in order to help them get that set up. And lastly, there's also materials delivery that we plan to continue. So students aren't only going to be on their devices in order to learn. Everything from paper and pencil to physical materials, things that they may be building with, et cetera. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, are going to be a part of our distance learning program again. So what might a day look like for a young person? Well, if I'm an elementary school student, I might wake up and open up my computer and join a morning meeting with my friends or my peers. If I'm a secondary student, I might hop on and go to my home base or my first period class and engage with folks. I then may transition to something that's more asynchronous. So this is an example of a screenshot of Canvas, which is our learning management system. This is one-stop shop thing for distance learning and frankly for in-person learning as well. It really houses assignments and assessments that allows for kids to self-assess, allows for greater teacher to student communication, student to student communication, and caregiver communication as well. So when students are logged in, it's actually tracking their attendance in the system and their learning within that system, which then also allows families to know what their kids are working on, and they don't need 8 different classroom codes through Google Classroom in order to ensure that they know where they are, right? So if I'm a student, I might be logging in and engaging with the assignment. Maybe I'm doing some research and some reading, and then I'm ultimately creating a piece that somehow synthesizes my learning and demonstrates what I understand. If I'm a younger student, I might engage asynchronously with something like CERN, which is an online game-based math program. And then I might transition to some hands-on learning. So this is an example, big shout out. Pardon me. I'm so sorry. Carrie, do you mind taking over? Yes, this is an image of a program in the spring conducted by a wonderful technology teacher, Dave Buckner at DeWitt Middle School, that involves students receiving kits in the home setting to participate in the junior solar sprint. So they received materials and instructions. They worked virtually and synchronously together, and in the spring were able to effectively race their cars, right, as they might normally in an in-person setting. So that's an example of the type of work that might occur in a distance learning. Thanks, Carrie. My apologies. I'm so sorry, folks. And then I may engage as a young person in some small group instruction or some whole group instruction, again, online, to really round out my day. So what might an actual schedule look like? Well, if I'm a third grader, it might look like something like this. So this is not the absolute schedule for every third grader. This is simply a sample, an example. Again, maybe waking up and engaging in a morning meeting. Anything that's listed in yellow here is synchronous or live or in real time. And then I may transition to a small group math lesson with my teacher, maybe working with 4 or 5 other students on a very particular math problem as well. I may then engage in some independent practice around math potentially connecting science as well and implementing that case study or project-based learning approach. And then a whole group quickly transitioning to a small group, English language arts lesson. Maybe I'm learning about comprehension strategies or fluency and reading. They have lunch at home and then engage in PE, art, or music, either synchronously or asynchronously. It may also be connected and tied in directly with my classroom instruction as well. And then I may end the day with an English language arts and social studies project I'm working on asynchronously. What might an 8th grade student schedule look like? Well, we are moving to an A day, B day block schedule, similar to what's happening at the high school. Each student each day, Monday through Friday, is going to start with a home base. That's really their landing place, and the adults and the other kids in that community are going to have an opportunity to connect each day. And then we'll transition to the content and classes. Again, it's a regular day, simply spread out over 2 days to create this A day, B day, and they're much longer periods of time. So each period is an hour. Again, anything that is yellow is synchronous, and those office hours you'll see are during that lunchtime and also at the end of the day each day, and those are synchronous opportunities for kids and families to engage. And on Wednesdays, there will also be more opportunities for office hours, again, scheduled, so there's no overlap, right? And it's asynchronous learning for students, hands-on learning, labs, things like science labs, et cetera, and for those expressive academic courses. What might an 11th grader's day look like? Well, similar to the middle schools, and as described a few weeks ago, at the day in the life of the IHS student, you'll see again an A day and a B day. Again, it's that 8-period day stretched out over those 2 days with 88-minute blocks, with chunks between those blocks so kids can get up and move around as well. We're still looking at offering all of the advanced placement and honors courses that we had anticipated offering, and are, of course, getting ready to put out that master schedule and support families and students in understanding what exactly they're going to be learning come September 14th. Our educators are engaged in professional development now, and every single educator will be engaged in early September. Here's an example of blended learning session that folks are engaged in now. It's really about amplifying student learning, utilizing those technology tools. Additionally, we have sessions on anti-racist and culturally responsive practices, which allows educators to look at ways in which to validate and affirm young people and also build and bridge to the school culture. And our last strand is around social, emotional, and integrated social emotional learning, where students are learning about their own emotions, how to regulate them, and understand and relate to one another. Lastly, I think it's important to note that we continue to plan for in-person instruction. So for some, starting October 5th, we plan to be in our physical spaces. And so we wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to know we're partnering with folks from the Ithaca Children's Garden and elsewhere in order to actually walk our physical spaces and identify those key outdoor learning spaces for young people and shore up any infrastructure that's needed in order to both further define those and make those safer for young people as well, in addition to all of the health and safety measures that we're engaging in within our physical spaces as well.
Communication is our last pillar. It's an integral piece of what we do, and it's an iterative piece. As you can see, here we are in August. We've been, as Ms. Talcott has shared, training our time and resources on professional development, which will continue into September. We've conducted information sessions with staff, and certainly these sessions with you, our stakeholders in the community. I just want to draw your attention to Reopen ICSD Team, which is a new element we will be looking to roll out. We are hoping to engage a variety of stakeholders across our school district, both within and outside of the district to further support our reopening efforts. More information about this will be available soon.
All right.
As always, we encourage you to stay connected. We appreciate you being here today. We appreciate your questions. Please continue to reach out to us via email, talk with your building principal, use the Let's Talk to share your comments, questions, and concerns, or call us and leave a message, and we will do our best to get back to you. Your input into this process is incredibly important, and we will do everything we can to respond to you in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Thank you, Ms. Talcott. Some great questions coming in. And we're going to turn to our lightning round of Q&A right now. The big one that keeps coming up: what must happen between now and October the 5th? What should we be doing as a community, and what are the chances that we can open up on the 5th? Ms. Talcott, I'm going to ask you to talk about staffing, but first, I'm going to make a plea to our community. We have much work to do. Right now, we need to define and come up with a mental model for what safety is. We're bringing in the provost and a vice president from Cornell University to our Board of Education meeting on Tuesday to talk about what Cornell is doing, how they're looking to support the community with their efforts on the Hill. And we're also going to be bringing in, at some point, folks from Tompkins County, the health department and the administrative office to talk about our community and the issues that we're facing as a community, and to help us further define this notion of safety. We are also planning on Tuesday. So again, this meeting on Tuesday is going to be a big one. We're going to be bringing in medical professionals also to talk about where we are as a community and help us, again, to define this notion of safety. We have much work to do to define this notion of safety. We have much work to do to continue to keep our infection rates low. A major holiday is coming up. A major holiday weekend is coming up. And what we've learned in this community and others is that around those holidays is when we see spikes. If there's a significant spike in infection rates in this community, the chances of us opening up on the 5th are going to be very, very low. So wearing our mask, practicing physical distancing, having conversations with one another, and ultimately deciding what is safe and what level of safety will we accept as a community is going to be important for us over the coming weeks. And yes, we do have some staffing issues we need to work through. And Ms. Talcott is going to share some things we're thinking about and some things we're working on as we speak. Ms. Talcott.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. Carrie alluded to this earlier in talking about communication. So our Reopen ICSD team that we are looking to activate is going to take a look at this data. We have a number of scenarios that we're currently crafting in order to propose as draft possibilities for that team to consider based on the student information and based on the educator information, and really craft those solutions together and work to communicate those out. So we know that there are, of course, a number of constraints that we need to consider, and our goal is, as always, to bring as many students back as possible. And now it's shifting to starting October 5th.
Thank you. A lot of questions about outdoor spaces and tents, Ms. Talcott and Ms. Burke. They keep coming up. Maybe Ms. Burke, I know you've been dealing with this pretty much. You want to talk about where we are and how we're going to be using our outdoor spaces and what we've learned about tents and the guidance we've received from our state.
Yes, happy to. Thank you. And Ms. Talcott, you're welcome to add as well. As Ms. Talcott shared earlier, we are working with area experts around outdoor education, and again, looking how our spaces can best accommodate that. What we've learned from state guidance and regulations around tents is there's a lot of considerations with it. It includes requirements with respect to fire safety. It includes requirements which include architectural renderings before erecting a tent on a school site. Those are just two examples of things that I think in many cases make the use of tents a bit prohibitive, as opposed to utilizing the many natural resources and spaces that we have, for example, like the amphitheater LACS, similar version of that out at Enfield Elementary. So we're trying to maximize upon existing and current resources. Anything to add, Lily?
All right. A big one, these elementary schedules, particularly the elementary schedules. When do we plan to get those schedules out? When do we plan to share our class lists? And what happens if a parent's schedule doesn't line up with a young person's schedule? Ms. Tauke.
Thank you. It's a good question, and of course we've thought much about that as well. The schedules are currently in development. Frankly, a group of fabulous educators from our task force and others were meeting this morning in order to further define that, and then of course then it fits into each school building's master schedule, right? So recommendations district-wide by grade level, and then transition those to our school buildings. So those are currently in development. Obviously, the next couple of weeks, those should be completed and then communicated out, frankly, as quickly as possible. Our focus is really on creating heterogeneous or mixed, diverse groups of learners to engage together, and then to go from there. Although a number of folks have asked us, you know, my goodness, we really need to make sure that we know exactly who's planning for in-person and who's planning for distance learning right now, and essentially cohort that way, because we don't know what October 5th will bring us. We know that we want a really solid start to the school year, and that with intentional planning, we can make that transition when and if we need to.
Ms. Burke, a question keeps coming up about testing, and are we testing all students and all staff members? COVID-19 testing, by the way.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. The CDC doesn't recommend universal testing of all students and staff. Implementation of a surveillance testing program in schools poses a number of challenges, such as infrastructure or dedicated resources. There are also practical considerations to testing students, such as disruption to the educational environment, as well as the need for parental consent of any testing involving students. We do play a role in identifying individuals who may have symptoms of COVID or exposure through screening that occurs in the home setting. Of course, any persons who present who have symptoms suggestive of COVID, directing them to their healthcare provider and or the Department of Health, who make determinations about who should be tested. We are committed to making sure that our staff have accurate and timely information about where and how to access testing. That is certainly among our responsibilities. And we recognize that testing alone is not sufficient to combat the spread of COVID. So we're focusing our efforts on implementing those multiple prevention and mitigation efforts, which include symptom screening, promoting behaviors that reduce spread like respiratory and hand hygiene, mask wearing, physical distancing, and maintaining environments and operations that effectively reduce the risk of the spread of COVID.
All right. And I'll leave this last one to Ms. Tauke. Any other information you need to share? And will parents get a chance to choose again? Will we resurvey folks? And can folks change their mind? So that's a combination of a bunch of things there, and anything else you wish to share about our planning before we close for today. Ms. Tauke.
Thank you. Yeah. We do anticipate that we're going to need to gather more information from our families again, especially given what the Reopen ICSD team designed. And we know that our families may also change their minds based on the data that's coming through, especially given the upcoming mobility, as you said, Dr. Brown. So we'll be communicating about that as well. My apologies earlier, I forgot to indicate what would happen if a caregiver's schedule doesn't line up with the child's schedule. So if it's okay, I'd just like to circle back to that, which is, you know, we talked about in the spring and are planning to think forward to do this as well in the fall, is to record those sessions and make those available. We also know that communication is key with kids and families and educators, and so it's important for families to let us know, and we can certainly see what we can do there. I also just want to thank everyone for their ongoing incredible engagement, and we know how difficult this is for you all, and frankly how difficult it has been for all of us. We all are parents as well, And we really appreciate your engagement so much, and your support and your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Talcott. Thank you, Ms. Burke. I too wish to thank everyone for joining us and for your flexibility and patience and your collaboration as we attempt to do what's right by our young people and community. If you didn't get your question answered today, and there's still hundreds of them coming in, please send it to Let's Talk, or send it to myself or Ms. Talcott. We'll try our best to get right back to you. And go to our website for updated information. And again, thank you for joining us on this Friday evening, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thank you.